Declassified. I'm Nathaniel Shepard, your host on behalf of author Daniel P. Douglas. In this series, we reveal real Cold War secrets and excavate the classified details your government hoped you'd never discover. And here we go. The Dugway sheep incident, when the army nerve-gassed 6,000 sheep and called it a day. It was March 14th, 1968, and ranchers in Skull Valley, Utah, began finding their sheep dying in the dirt. Not one or two, not a dozen, hundreds. They lay scattered across the desert floor, legs kicking at nothing, foam pouring from their mouths, their bodies twisting in ways sheep weren't meant to twist. By the time the sun set, approximately 6,000 sheep were dead across a 250 square mile area. No predators, no disease, just death, delivered on the wind from 27 miles away, where the United States Army had been playing with the most lethal substance ever created by man. The Army said they knew nothing about it. The sheep said nothing at all. Welcome to the moment when America's chemical weapons program literally blew up in our faces, and the only casualties were the ones too woolly to complain. To understand how thousands of sheep died in a single day, you need to understand what the Army considered normal operations at Dugway Proving Ground in 1968. Since 1951, Dugway had been America's premier chemical and biological weapons testing facility. They'd conducted hundreds of open-air tests. They'd released nerve agents, bacteria, and viruses into the Utah desert with the casual efficiency of a suburban dad spraying for weeds. The official justification was elegant in its paranoia. The Soviets had chemical weapons, so we needed chemical weapons. The Soviets might use biological weapons, so we needed to test biological weapons. The fact that we were testing these weapons on American soil, upwind from American citizens, that was just geographic convenience. On March 13th, 1968, convenience became catastrophe in Operation What Could Possibly Go Wrong. The test was routine. So routine, they didn't even give it a dramatic code name. Just another day of spraying VX nerve agent from an F-4 Phantom jet over the desert. VX nerve agent, for those fortunate enough not to know, is quite possibly the most lethal substance humans have created. A single drop on your skin will kill you. It's 10 times more deadly than sarin. It was invented by the British, perfected by the Americans, and feared by everyone with a functioning nervous system. The plan was simple. Spray VX nerve agent from tanks mounted on an F-4 Phantom. Release it over a designated grid in Dugway's test range. Watch what happened to the test equipment below, and pretend this somehow prepared us for Soviet chemical attack. The execution was less simple. In the late afternoon, the F-4 Phantom took off with its deadly cargo. The spray nozzles were supposed to shut off after releasing the VX over the test grid. They didn't. The plane continued flying. The nozzle continued spraying. The wind continued blowing. 27 miles away, sheep continued grazing, unaware they were about to become Cold War casualties. How the wind doesn't respect military boundaries. Here's what the Army understood about wind in 1968. It blows. Here's what they apparently didn't understand. It blows wherever it wants. The VX cloud, freed from its intended test grid, rode the wind east towards Skull Valley. It was invisible, odorless, and traveling at about 35 miles per hour. The sheep grazing in the valley had no warning. One moment, they were eating grass. The next moment, their nervous systems were shutting down. VX works by destroying the enzyme that allows your nerves to relax after firing. Every nerve in your body fires continuously. Your muscles contract and won't release. Your pupils shrink to pinpoints. Your lungs fill with fluid. You die drowning in your own secretions, every muscle locked in a final spasm. Now imagine that happening to 6,000 sheep simultaneously. The morning after, a valley of death. Ranchers found the killing fields at dawn on March 14th. The scene defied comprehension. Sheep lay scattered across miles of rangeland. Some were still alive, barely, their bodies contorting in nerve agent-induced seizures. The ranchers called veterinarians, the vets called the state called the federal government, and somewhere in the Pentagon, someone probably said, "Oh, shit." Veterinarians who responded to the scene later described unprecedented carnage. Sheep dying in grotesque positions, their necks twisted back, legs rigid. Some were still alive but paralyzed and had to be euthanized by the hundreds. The body count kept climbing, 6,000 to 6,400 sheep dead. Counts varied because some bodies were never found. Owned by 18 different ranchers, spread across 2 counties, all dead within 48 hours. The Army's initial response wasn't us. The cover-up choreography. The Army's denial followed a predictable pattern documented in declassified reports and congressional testimony. March 14th to 15th. We're not aware of any connection to Dugway operations. March 16th to 20th. We're investigating all possibilities, including natural causes. March 21st to 31st. While we did conduct tests on March 13th, there's no evidence linking them to the sheep deaths. April 1st to 15th. We cannot rule out the possibility of some connection, but correlation doesn't imply causation. May 1968. Quietly begins negotiations with ranchers for compensation. The investigation, when it finally happened, was damning. Tests on dead sheep found VX nerve agent in their tissues. The weather patterns for March 13th to 14th showed wind carrying directly from Dugway to Skull Valley. The timing matched perfectly, but the Army never officially admitted responsibility. They just started writing checks. The price of 6,000 lives. The Army ultimately paid $376,685 to the affected ranchers. That's about $3.3 million in today's money. For comparison, that's less than the cost of 2 Tomahawk cruise missiles, which we fire at foreign wedding parties with disturbing regularity. The breakdown was coldly bureaucratic. Market value per sheep, $63 in 1968 dollars. Additional compensation for breeding stock, variable. Compensation for emotional distress, $0. Compensation for poisoning the land, $0. Admission of guilt, none. The ranchers took the money because what else could they do? Sue the Army? Fight the federal government in court? They had ranches to run and dead sheep to bury. The bigger picture, decades of experiments. The sheep incident wasn't an aberration. It was the inevitable result of 17 years of treating Utah like a giant petri dish. Between 1951 and 1969, Dugway Proving Ground conducted extensive testing with multiple varieties of nerve agents including VX and sarin, mustard gas and other chemical weapons, biological warfare experiments by the hundreds, and various simulants, supposedly harmless substitutes that often weren't. They tested an arsenal of horrors, VX nerve agent killed the sheep. Sarin nerve agent, what Saddam Hussein used on the Kurds. Anthrax, self-explanatory horror. Q fever, biological weapon that causes chronic fatigue. Tularemia, rabbit fever, weaponized. Venezuelan equine encephalitis, brain-swelling virus. All of this happened roughly 85 miles southwest of Salt Lake City. The wind patterns that carried VX to the sheep could just as easily have carried it to the suburbs. The only reason thousands of humans didn't die was pure, dumb luck. The political fallout, finally. The dead sheep accomplished what 17 years of poisoning the desert couldn't. They made the invisible visible. The media coverage was devastating. Walter Cronkite talking about nerve-gassed sheep on the evening news. Photos of ranchers standing over fields of dead animals. Editorial cartoons of the Pentagon poisoning America. The political response was swift. Congressional hearings where generals squirmed. National Security Council review of all chemical weapons testing. Public outcry that wouldn't go away. In 1969, President Nixon did something remarkable for a Republican president during the Cold War. He banned open-air chemical weapons testing. He also began the process that would lead to the US signing the Biological Weapons Convention. The sheep had done what no peace protester could. They'd made chemical weapons testing politically toxic. The modern Echo, Dugway, still operates. Here's the kicker that would be funny if it weren't terrifying. Dugway Proving Ground is still operational, still testing, still 27 miles from those same grazing lands. They claim they only test defensive measures now, protective equipment, detection systems, decontamination procedures, all enclosed facilities, all perfectly safe. The same army that said spraying nerve gas from jets was perfectly safe. In 2011, Dugway was locked down after losing track of a vial of VX, just temporarily misplaced the deadliest nerve agent known to man. Found it a day later. Oops. In 2015, Dugway accidentally shipped live anthrax samples to laboratories in 9 states and South Korea. They thought it was dead. It wasn't. Nobody died, but only through sheer luck. The infrastructure of insanity remains. We just promise to be more careful now. The verdict. The Dugway sheep incident represents a perfect crystallization of Cold War logic. We were so afraid of what the Soviets might do that we actually did it to ourselves. We turned Utah into a chemical weapons laboratory. We sprayed nerve agents designed to kill Soviet soldiers over American soil. We poisoned our own citizens' livestock while preparing for a war that never came. The 6,000 dead sheep were never about the sheep. They were about the willingness of the American military to treat its own backyard as an expendable testing ground. They were about the belief that national security justified any risk, any experiment, any accident. Most of all, they were about visibility. For 17 years, Dugway had been poisoning the desert in secret. The sheep made that poisoning impossible to ignore. They died where Americans could see them, could count them, could mourn them. The army paid $3.3 million in today's money for those sheep. But the real cost was measured in something more valuable: the loss of plausible deniability. After March 14th, 1968, nobody could pretend we weren't capable of gassing our own. Somewhere in the Pentagon archives, there's a report explaining how we nerve-gassed 6,000 sheep. The author either got promoted for crisis management or fired for creating visible evidence. The difference probably came down to how well they classified the paperwork. The sheep didn't care either way. they were already dead. And there it is, another documented descent into the declassified, filed properly, stamped accordingly, and revealed at last. I'm Nathaniel Shepard, your host on behalf of author Daniel P. Douglas. Be sure to check out Daniel's Substack, The Intelligence Bulletin from author Daniel P. Douglas, for other podcast series, written articles, and links to all of his books. Thank you for listening.